want to call to order the meeting of the Forest Grove School District Budget Committee. And we're going to start with the flag salute. Everyone stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States.
You left it. You left out.
Right up here.
My boss called me right before I had to take off.
I did to call the order and
Okay.
flag salute. So we're just making introduction.
All right. Perfect. Introduction.
Dave Parker, Superintendent. I just, before we move on, I just want to also say that we've got all of our principals here for tonight and then our next budget meeting, just as questions come up or if there are things, so they're there as part of the audience and they'll introduce themselves.
Eileen Fluke, Business Manager.
Nicholas Hoffman,
Hey, Brenda, School Board Member.
our budget committee member.
Mark Garrett, School Board Member.
Melinda Fisher, Budget Committee Member. Stephanie Rose, Budget Committee Member. And then we have two online.
Yeah. We'll have our online introduce.
Hi, this is Sujay Hernandez. I'm a community member.
Val Ingram is also online.
Okay.
María Miranda, principal at Joseph Gale.
John O'Neill, Assistant Superintendent.
Karen O'Neill, high school principal. Karen Kelly, principal at Armstrong.
Everyone in communication. Roy Fisher, Principal Orange Park. Kim Grant.
And
Graves, like make an entrance for the full board. Yes.
Oh, there's John, he made it more evident.
Yeah.
John Allen, Principal at Dilly.
Okay. So approval of tonight's agenda.
I move to approve the agenda as submitted.
A second, Nicholas Hoffman. Ash. Do we all vote? All in favor? Aye. Okay, approval of last April 24th meeting minutes.
Yeah, we should probably just check and make sure online people voted yes on the agenda.
Okay.
Yes.
We will vote right now.
Okay. So approval of the meeting minutes from April 24th.
I move to approve the minutes from the last meeting, April 23rd, 2023.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so I guess Dave, off to you for.
I'm going to start us out here. I want to just point out the budget message is in your budget book. It's kind of right after the tab there. If you want to follow along or, you know, going to go through it, but just if you're later and you want to know some of the things we said. So first, I want to just start with, I'm honored to present the proposed 23-24 budget. This year, we continue to face challenges with health and sickness that we have observed in the previous 3 years. We've managed those challenges without significant disruption to the school year, and we remain focused on improving instruction and outcomes for students. The focus began this year with our K-6 literacy adoption, which took place in June of 2022. Amplify is an explicit phonics and language comprehension-based literacy curriculum that was chosen by a district-wide adoption committee. Over the past decade, the research surrounding how students become readers has become very clear. The science of reading is now decidedly in support of explicit phonics, which is the way in which we teach our students to connect the letters and symbols to the sounds that we make when we speak. Amplify Begin brings with it a different way of which we teach reading and writing to our students. The design principles of Amplify curriculum are direct, explicit, systematic, grade level instruction for all students, which is a big shift from the kind of work group model that we were using. So this is a big change for us. This past summer, every K-6 teacher was involved in several days of professional development, help them learn to teach this new way using Amplify. Since that summer, teachers have participated in monthly professional development. It will continue to be a priority as we move forward. In the spring student investment account, right as we went into the pandemic, this board had passed the student investment account. So in the spring of 2020, right before the pandemic, the school board approved the district's expenditures for the student investment account. One of the investments that was made was an investment in instructional coaching. We now have 8 coaches who work with teachers to improve instruction in literacy, math, behavior support, student success coaches, English as a second language and dual language. Coaches work collaboratively with teachers on ways to improve instruction. They work independently of the administration and truly there for teachers and improving. This was kind of the first uninterrupted year with our coaches. Since we passed the SIA, this is kind of the first year we've really got to utilize them. Attendance, this past year, we've seen a decrease in the overall COVID cases as a whole, but we've seen an increase in the number of colds, flus, RSV. I put a graph in here kind of so that you can see what our attendances look like. This is overall, when you look at the different grade levels, there's different grade levels, but overall, what I think you can see is we're continuing to see a pretty big decrease in the attendance. We don't believe this is all just the increase in colds, flu, and RSV. The current average percentage of students attending more than 90% of their classes is way too low to be completely explained by sickness. This isn't unique to Forest Grove, as we're seeing this across the county and the state. This will be an important focus for us coming up next year. One aspect of the strategic plan that we're right in the middle of developing is improving attendance. There's many aspects. Oh wait, I skipped a little important part there. Students who during the pandemic disconnected from our schools will need added support in reconnecting with their schools and finding a sense of belonging that's missing. There are many aspects of our schools that attract students: subject matter, a favorite teacher, or trusted adults, athletics, clubs, activities. We're going to need to put a focus on all of these areas to reconnect kids to school. Our bond in November of 2022, the Forest Grove and Cornelius community passed a $121 million bond. We're extremely thankful. That was a lot of work by folks, and it's going to bring about some huge changes for our school district, positive changes. With the passing of the bond, the district also received an awesome grant worth $6.9 million, which means the overall funding over the next 4 years will be reinvesting $128 million into our schools. While the bond will invest in every school, the major projects are a brand new Cornelius Elementary. We're already at a place where we've got almost the schematic design of the school. They introduced it to the design committee last night. We've been working on it throughout, but we're making great progress on Cornelius Elementary. There's a new entry for Neil Armstrong that will also make it so that there's a line of sight from the office to the front doors. Currently, the office is around the corner. There'll be an expansion of PE spaces at NAMS, safety and security upgrades at every school. We're right in the middle of kind of the analysis of that. I can also tell you that what we originally thought when the long-range facility plan created the budget for safety and security, we're going to end up spending more money in that area just because there's a lot of need. But we're working through that process to figure out exactly what that looks like. Upgraded or a new pre-K classroom at all of the elementary schools. We now have 4 of our 6 elementaries that have pre-Ks in them. Upgraded playgrounds at every elementary school. Yay. Classroom technology upgrades at every school, renovations of the tracks at NAMS and Tom McCall. This was part of the, it was part of the bond last time, but it got value engineered out. So we're kind of trying to close that loop and make good on that promise from the last bond. Renovation of the gym floor that's cupped at Tom McCall. Heating and cooling upgrades at every school, seismic upgrades at 5 schools. This is just a partial list. There's even more that we'll be doing. Since the bond was passed, we've been busy with the planning and scheduling. Some of the projects that are gonna occur this summer, the renovation of the Tom McCall gym, the renovation of the Tom McCall track, the renovation of the NAMS track and field. There's HVAC and roofing projects in multiple buildings that will happen this summer. Kind of talked about Cornelius Elementary, Malem has been hired. I will say that the one thing, Malem has been hired as the architectural firm, and they've really worked hard to get out into the community. They have worked with a widely diverse set of stakeholders. We're probably upwards of 1,000 different people that they talk to, considering all of the groups. And those groups are teachers, staff members, community members, LGBTQ students, parents of migrant students, ELL parents, parents of color, the design advisory group, and more. And they continue to meet. They just met last week and a half ago with 150 high school students, and began to ask them about what their experience was in elementary school and how we might be able to, what might we learn from that. We're headed into a time where we will finalize the design and start preparing to take the project to bid. It looks like next February is kind of winterish, is where we're kind of focusing right now to get the bid rolling. We'll break ground sometime in 24. And then it takes 1.5 years to complete the construction, with it opening September of 2025. I want to talk a little bit about enrollment as the impact on budgets. While districts across the country are continuing to lose enrollment, our enrollment has stayed pretty steady. The trend that we're seeing, though, that we want to make sure you understand, is that our incoming kindergarten classes are smaller than our outgoing senior classes. And so that means that every year for the foreseeable future, we should be having fewer kids. Now, the only thing that helps us right now is we're seeing a migration of kids in the other grades, 1st through 11th, into those grade levels. If we don't have those kind of migrations coming in, then we will see a decreasing enrollment over time, just because of that kindergarten senior kind of net decrease. We've continued to maintain our class sizes over the last several years. Currently, we have an average class size of 22.2 in K-6 classrooms, 27.1 at Tom McCall, 29.9 at Neil Armstrong, and 29 at Forestville High School. We're still working on kind of NAMS and Tom McCall to keep those class sizes lower, as we begin to work on restoring a sense of belonging for those students experiencing disconnection. We want to continue to watch the class sizes. We think that's an important thing. With smaller class sizes, the teacher will have the time they need to focus on each student. Budget. So this year, here's what's going on. Through careful management and frugality, our districts maintain a substantial ending fund balance. And it's at 19% right now, which is very healthy. That's mostly been because over the past couple of years, we've had federal funds. We've also not been able to fill all of our positions. So the money that we have budgeted has built up on us. Subs, we haven't been able to fill all of our sub positions. So we have accumulated an ending fund. Maintaining a healthy ending fund balance is important, because the federal funds that have helped ease our management of the pandemic are coming to an end. We have hired some temporary employees with those federal funds, and we now need to begin to trim those positions from the organization. The ending fund balance will help ease our transition back into a normal operation. We will need to do this in a measured and careful way, but we need to invest in ways we can improve student outcomes. As we move forward into this next school year, we still have significant needs as we work to bring our students back to grade level. The current co-chair's budget is $9.9 billion. The way that we'll get this money in this biennium will be 49% of that money will come in the first year and 51% will come in the second year. At 49%, it's only a 2.3% increase, is what the $9.9 billion is. Our COLA is 3.25, our steps are 4.5%, and inflation's running at 6%. None of those had, and salaries are like 80%, somewhere around 80% of our total budget. So we're running at least 8 or 9% just to stay even. So that 2.3% is woefully inadequate. I know many of you mentioned it today, which is we have articles. You've seen articles about districts cutting in different places. Well, this is why. 2.3% is not enough money to run our schools. The investment needed to continue to improve instruction and student outcomes is not in this co-chair's budget. As a result, this will slow our ability to recover from the pandemic. This $9.9 billion budget will create a $6.3 million deficit in this budget. Now, we have ending fund balance. Eileen's going to go through the numbers and such, but for me, I just want to make sure that everyone understands we need to be, this is a problem for us. It's important that we get our legislators to pass a budget, an adequate budget for our schools. 10.3 is closer to what we need. So we're not running in a deficit. We see significant risk in our ability to improve student outcomes. Co-chair's budget will mean that we'll be trimming staff and operations and consuming ending fund balance, all while not expanding investments in instruction. With all of this in mind, the Forest Grove School District is still committed to providing each student with the opportunity for a quality education as we continue to eliminate the achievement gap for our students. I'm proud to serve as the superintendent of the Forest Grove School District, along with the dedicated staff around us and working every day who continue to make a difference in the life of students. And I would say questions, but I think we probably need to hear from Eileen and then we can start because she'll make more of this clear. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Move on to the budget review.
All right, so tonight we'll start with just a review of the budget committee's roles and responsibilities, just to get a quick update of that. We'll talk briefly about the current year's cash flow and where we stand this year, because that has such a big impact on next year's budget as our beginning fund balance rolls forward. And then we'll spend most of the time talking about the 23-24 budget. At the end, we'll have opportunity for questions and comments, but please, as we're going through it, feel free to ask any questions as we go through this information. So quick budget committee review. When looking at the budget committee's responsibilities, the budget committee is responsible for receiving the budget, listening to the budget message from Superintendent Parker. And then once you receive the budget, then it's an opportunity for you to review it, analyze it, ask questions, ask for additional information, test it against our district strategies, our district strategic plan. And then ultimately in the end, we're looking for the budget committee to recommend a maximum level of appropriations for the district to spend next year. And you're recommending that to the school board, which will approve and adopt the budget once you have an opportunity to review it. What is not the responsibility of the budget committee, just a quick reminder, is the budget committee doesn't set salaries, doesn't set benefits, contract terms, doesn't talk about specific individuals. Those, these are really items for the school board itself. The school board sets the contracts and those are negotiated with our unions. The budget committee doesn't decide what major programs are or alter district goals or policies. These are all board obligations and board responsibilities. So really you're looking at those goals and policies and making sure that the budget reflects those. Mm-hmm.
Can you recommend a level of spending appropriations? What can you
I think
describe that a little bit?
2 slides.
Oh, okay,
Once you have the once you have the budget and you are ready to move forward, you have basically 4 options. One is approve the budget as it's proposed to you. The second one is you can increase the appropriation, you can decrease the appropriation amount, or you can move appropriation between major functions. And so I'll talk, and the next slide, what that really means. After the budget committee approves the budget, it will then go to the board for adoption. And then once the board has adopted the budget through a board resolution, they can amend the budget up to 10% of a variance. If it goes over that 10%, then we'll have to do a public hearing and provide additional opportunities for public comment. So that's kind of the process between now and then. And the next slide shows when I talk about major appropriation, and the end goal is a resolution that looks kind of like this. And this is kind of hard to see, but when we talk major appropriation level, we're talking general fund instruction, general fund support services, general fund debt service, special revenue grant funds, instruction versus support service, food services. And so these are setting our maximum spending level by these major categories. Does that help, Mark?
Yeah, that's not in here though. It's just on the slide.
It's, you all should have a copy of this presentation.
Oh, it's gonna be. In,
Yep. So if you want to follow through. It's,
Okay, I got it.
okay.
Pretty small print.
I can give you a bigger one.
No, that's.
Actually,
I cited.
59.
I got it.
page 169
Okay,
of the budget book
okay,
is the full page.
okay.
So that is a draft of what the resolution will look like if this budget is approved as is.
So is the bond fund money all captured under capital projects for half of this year and
Correct.
next year?
And the bond, right now it has facilities acquisition and construction for 64 million. We're not gonna get close to 64 million next year, but having an appropriation available, so if we get further along in the Cornelius project or some of the other projects that we have planned for year 2 and we get to them early, it allows us to be able to continue to moving forward on those capital projects, especially with the bond, because as fast as we can get through them and doing them right and planning them, we want to be able to make sure that they're, you know, those projects are done.
Yeah.
So this allows us to have the resources out there. Quick reminder, this slide we went over in the last budget committee meeting, but talking about our guiding principles as we're developing the budget document and the budget process. We're looking at our goals are to maintain lower class sizes, focusing on all students graduating, providing supports to our underserved populations, focusing on mental health and behavioral health, and then focusing on accelerating the student learning loss from the COVID pandemic. And lastly, the financial stability. On the right is the things that were talked about in our last budget committee meeting as your goals or your interests as a budget committee. And that was improving instruction should be number 1. Lowering class sizes, K4 is critical. Behavioral and mental health is just as critical. And then there was a interest we heard last time of a striving to increase instructional time for students. And then connecting CTE programs with local businesses. Was there anything that I'm missing that you guys talked about last time that we should be reflecting?
Increase instructional time, is it increasing the days or increasing the time you're?
Combination or as much student time, I think was what was talked about. So increasing instructional days ultimately is a goal. This budget doesn't increase instructional time as compared to, but we want to make sure that we're reflecting what your interests are. Yeah. Okay. Then, if we look at the budget committee calendar and where we are today as compared to the overall process, tonight is the first official meeting of the budget committee. And then we have next Thursday for a second budget committee meeting. And you'll have the option to approve a budget at that meeting, or we can do approval of a budget by May 25th. We will need to have an approved budget by May 25th in order to do the board hearing on June 12th. So kind of the next steps. And then next we have the current year's cash flow projection. This is a similar format to what is seen in our other budget committee meetings and board meetings, where we have 2 years historical data, current year budget. And then for this current year's forecast, the total 22-23 forecast is in the older box. And it has not changed significantly from our budget meeting last month. It's pretty consistent with that. We are going to end with just under $15 million in our fund balance this year, 19%. It is still in deficit spending. We are dropping our fund balance by almost $2.1 million this year. So that means we're spending more than additional resources that are coming in for this current year. But we are still maintaining a fairly healthy ending fund balance. And then for 23-24 proposed budget. This budget that is in front of you is for $248 million. It is significantly greater than last year. Last year's budget was only $138 million. When we're looking at the, I guess, pieces of the pie, I took this year's budget and then last year's budget, so you can kind of see the difference and why. And the yellow piece of the pie last year is pretty tiny. This year, it's 40% of our budget. That is the bond projects. That is our capital projects. So whenever we're looking at these slides, I try to show the differences so you can see how that has changed. So capital projects went from 2% of our total revenue to 40% of our total revenue. And that's that big shift in total resources. When we look at resources by major source, beginning fund balance went from about 18% of our total resources to now 51%. Most of that is going to be that bond sale that we did just before spring break this year, and that those revenue resources will go into beginning fund balance for next year's budget.
Is that a separate bond than the capital improvement bond?
The capital improvement is the bond sale.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So when we sell a bond, it goes, the resources that we generate from the sale goes into revenue for us. And then when we spend the bond funds, we'll spend it in expenditures. And then when we make the payments for that debt, so let's see, the resources and the expenditure for the spending of the funds is in capital projects, but the payment of the debt is going to be in the 300 funds, the debt service. So you'll see an increase in the 300s and an increase in the 400s because you have both components of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. The next slide, again, I wanted to try to show it 2 different ways. If this is our expenditures for next year, it's $189 million of expenditures. The slide to the left is how I would typically show our expenditures by major function. And this has compared to last year. So looking at the dark green, instruction was 53% of our budget, and now it's only 35% of our budget. And so you can see that big shift. And then when we get over to facilities acquisition and improvements, it jumps up to 35% of our budget. But if I take out that facilities and that debt related to the bond, we are pretty close to in line with where we were last year, spending 61% of our budget on instruction and 34% of our budget on support services. So if I take out the stuff related to the bond that kind of skews it, we look pretty close to where we were last year.
And we don't want to be where we were last year, right? Just to say,
Right, well, this,
we want to improve more than.
we do want to improve, but I guess what I'm trying to say with this is that we're not shifting the percentage of our budget between support services and instruction. So we're not, we always like to look at what percentage of our budget we spent on instruction last year, what are we spending on it this year? So if we start to see a trend down on instruction, we know that we're shifting our spending trends. So we're spending less in the classroom and more outside the classroom. So we always want to make sure that that isn't happening. Yeah, and so that's why I kind of pulled the debt and capital out so that we can truly see that our spending trends on instruction and direct classroom is maintaining. Another view of the same $189 million, but looking at it based on object instead of function. So whether it's salaries, benefits, services, professional services, or supplies, looking at it with the capital and debt included, we're only spending 42% of our budget on salaries and benefits. But if I take those out, we're more in line with where we were last year at 74% of our budget is salaries and benefits. All right, so everything that I've gone over so far is all of our funds together as a whole. And since the general fund is the one fund that is our operating account, that is what we have all of our instruction, our support services, our maintenance, everything is kind of in that where we have the most flexibility of spending. The next few slides are going to go specifically over that general fund. Looking at the cash flow for the general fund in comparison to this year's cash flow, same resources up top, expenditures in the middle, ending fund balance at the bottom. In resources, you'll see the $15 million comes up to our beginning fund balance. And then we'll have $91 million of resources, $82 million of expenditures, giving us an $8.6 million ending fund balance. It does bring it to 10.5%, which is above our board policy of 8%. But that is to help support us in the second year of biennium. This has us utilizing $6.3 million of those fund balance, one-time funds, to be able to maintain current operations. Major assumptions that are in this budget is, like Mr. Parker said, this state school fund is based on a $9.9 billion state school fund. That is what the governor's recommended budget is and the co-chair's budget. We won't know what the state school fund allocation will be until after the legislative session is done. So I think the next revenue forecast comes May 17th, and then it'll probably be a couple of weeks after that before we have a better indication of that. We can't hold up the budget process to wait for that. So we are budgeting based on what we know and that $9.9 billion. This does maintain lower class sizes. It maintains all current operational structures of the district, and it includes all bargain contract amounts. This next year, our licensed contract rates are set, our classified contract rates are set. So those are known. We are not in bargaining for those groups. Major changes that are in the budget this next year is we are including payroll tax for Oregon paid family medical leave. It's 1.2% of salaries, half being funded by employees, half being funded by the district. And that is a new state law, which it'll start September 1st for us. It does include fully budgeting CALC, our Community Alternative Learning Center. It has been budgeted, in the past, like this current year, it was budgeted under the high school's budget. And then supported by ESSER funds and SIA funds to increase the enrollment there. Going into this next budget cycle, we're pulling the calc budget out of the high school budget, so they have their own budget, their own FTE allocation. And those FTE that have been funded from SIA and ESSER, which are going, ESSER is going away. Those are getting funded from the general funds. So when we look at FTE increases, you'll see an increase there. Then as you're going through the budget document under the function that calc is on, you'll see increases in services and supplies there. And that's really to intentionally provide that program its own budget. The next one here is the transition of substitute services. Currently, and excuse me, looking at the budget document, and if you're looking at the current budget to the proposed budget, you'll see a lot of variances on almost every function of a reduction in salaries and an increase in services. And what that is a couple of months ago, the board approved us to go and contract services for our substitutes with a third-party provider. And so that shifts where the costs are from salaries and benefits to professional services. So as you're going through the document, you'll see that one a lot. And then last, this budget does remove all of the current year's temporary FTE. In this current year's budget, we had, I think, 11 FTE for temporary subs. And then we had 3 temporary ELD FTE that we added, and those have been removed. Right. This last time, at the last budget committee meeting, I showed a graph of the state school fund over time and how it's changed. This, I wanted to show just another view of the state school fund and how it's allocated and changed over time. The gray bars are the dollar amount per weight districts get from the state school fund. So that takes that $9.9 billion and breaks it down per student per weight for districts. And so the 23-24 budget is based on a $9.9 billion state school fund. It's $9,721 per student. And then it shows it over time. So 17-18, it was 77.85. And each year, the percentages show how it's changed. 18-19, it increased by 2.1%, 6%, 3.9%. Then you can see in the 23-24 budget, it's only increasing 1.3%. So as Dave talked about in his budget message, our COLAs and our cost of living and CPI does not support that. And so that's why that ending fund balance usage and deficit spending is happening.
I mean, so what's happening in Washington DC right now, if they don't pass this budget, June first. Yeah, does that impact us or not, or do we know what's gonna happen with the state?
I don't know either.
You don't know.
Yeah, I shudder to think, I mean, our government will still have to go through and do their budgets, but my understanding of the debt limit is it's gonna shake everybody up and then markets are gonna crash. I don't know all those elements, but that can't be good for us.
I'm just thinking of state dollars flowing.
Yeah.
I mean, federal dollars flowing and then the impact of the state and then, we're down here with, we take whatever we can get. So I don't know if anybody's talking about that.
I haven't heard anything yet.
Mhm. You've given me something else
To
to
worry
not speak about.
Sorry, I'll send you a bottle of wine.
Right. And then the 2 lines that I have there are the ADMW extended, so that ADMW is the number of students in the state, average daily membership of students in the state, and then their weights for the demographics on top of that. The top purple line is the statewide ADMW, and they're on different axes. But you can see how it changed when the pandemic hit. The statewide in 2021 dropped, and then Forest Grove School District is the green one, dropped also that same year. We lost, if we look at our enrollment from 2017-18 to 23-24, we're down 5%, and the state between that same period is down 4%. So we've lost a little bit more than the statewide average, but it just shows that we are trending in the same manner as the state is. And then this one is a lot of information, but it shows those weights over time from 2011 all the way to today. The green bar is Forest Grove School District's average daily membership. So that's our enrollment each year over time. The blue bar is our enrollment plus our weights. So that's our ESL weights, our IEP weights, our pregnant and parenting, our poverty weights, all added on top of it. So you can see that gap of where our enrollment is versus what we get funded at. And then the lines across are those additional weights. Our IEP weights are about 13% of our total enrollment. Our ESL weights are about 10%. Poverty is 3%. And then our pregnant and parenting and foster is less than 1%. It just kind of shows you those trends over time of how the demographics have changed for us. In this budget, it has our kinder through 4th grade being budgeted at an average of 23.3 to 1. For class size, grades 5-6 at 27.5 to 1, 7-8, 24, adjusted for instructional time at 28 to 1. Grades 9-12 is at 23.6 to 1, but weighted at 31 to 1. So that gives you an idea over time how our average class size has changed. Just looking at K4 back in 2018-19, we were at 25 to 1. Now we're at 23 to 1. So we've made some progress from 2018-19 to today. And then in the far right column, that has not changed over the last 5 years. We've maintained kind of the district target of we've kind of used that as we don't want to exceed that. And if we can budget lower than that, then that's what we've been trying to do. So we are budgeting lower on our 5-6, 7-8, and yeah. When we look at the overall FTE in the budget document, you'll see our general fund has 560.49 FTE in it. This is 1.24 FTE lower than last year's budget. If we look at the different categories of staffing, the building staffing is all up top, the district staffing is down below. And the teacher, which is our licensed classroom instruction, it's not changing that much overall, but when we break down that 0.23 change, there's a lot happening within that. It has the 11 FTE of the temporary subs that are removed. And then we're increasing our classroom K4 FTE by 2.5, Tom McCall by 1, NAMS by 1, Calc by 3. That's budgeting them separately. And then Forest Grove High School holding them harmless for the loss of enrollment by 3.0 FTE. So, and loss of enrollment, I mean by shift to Calc. So Calc went from an average of 80 students, 50 to 80 students, to now 175 students. So instead of having such a big impact on the high school, we've added those FTE there. Going down the rest of the line, the next one is the ELD teachers. Those are the temporary ones that were added this current year for temporary using ending fund balance. And then Tomahawk's advanced math teacher is moved out of the teacher line because we're not counting that as against their class size anymore. We moved that out, so it's not impacting that. And then the calc administrator that was in SIA this current year is being added to the general fund. And those are the major ones that are in here. Any questions so far? I've gone over quite a bit.
So staffing.
Okay.
So I see that the changes. Overall staffing is an increase of 0.23
For teachers,
for teachers. That's what I thought.
yes.
For teachers. So. But when I follow the arrow to the right,
Mhm.
it's been jumbled, right? I mean, so minus 11, those are temporary subs.
Mhm.
And, 2.5, can you explain that again? Maintain K4 class size. What is that 2.5?
That, yeah, that's looking at what our projected enrollment is for next year
Okay,
by classroom, by building, and trying to maintain that overall average. So that is really looking at what this year's current enrollment is, rolling it forward to next year, adjusting for some students coming in, and then saying, okay, at Cornelius, we have this number of kids in first grade. To be able to make that happen and have good class sizes, we need 4 teachers there. We need 3 teachers in this grade band. So that's really going through and looking at all of the detail and trying to figure out what that staffing level should be. And it's 2.5 FTE increase.
that have moved.
Increase from what we have today
Okay.
in today's
Oh,
budget.
I see, because 11 went, got it. Okay. Yeah, 11 went away. Okay, because of the temporary.
So if we do that minus 11 and then add the rest, that net is 0.23 increase.
These are the 11 we had added last year, right?
These are the 11 we added temporary. Mhm.
And those are based on. So NAMS has 1, Tomahawk has 1, Calc has 3, high school has 3.75.
Mhm.
So how, it says hold harmless.
That's from calc increasing their student enrollment.
Okay.
And those students, we still only have one pool of students. So if we increase the students at calc, it's taking students away from the high school.
Yeah.
So to not take away FTE from the high school
You're adding one.
because of that.
Right. Thanks.
Hi, you guys. This is Valerie. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
I was wondering, how many did you say we're hiring at Tomahawk?
one.
Teachers. Did you say we're going to be hiring more to get that class size a little bit lower?
Yes, it's one.
Yes.
That's built
One.
into this.
Okay. And I can't see the numbers while I'm driving, but what did you say that the class size you're projecting it to be?
5, 6, 27.5 to 1. Which is
Okay,
lower.
currently
than-
Okay, currently it's at 28.5. I'm just wondering if that's really how many kids are in the classroom, because a lot of times I feel like those numbers are skewed based on counting administrators and counselors and other people in the buildings.
No, the teacher line, the teacher allocation is strictly classroom teachers to number of students at Tomahawk. And it does not include music and PE. So it's
Okay.
just classroom teachers. To create.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
And Val, in my budget message, I actually went and looked up their current class size and we're at 27.1. So just so you know, we're on that average right now.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Dave.
right. Historical ending fund balance. This shows historically from 2017-18 to this year's budget, our ending fund balance. The last 3 columns is really what I wanted to focus on is the third to the last one is the actual ending fund balance of each year. So when we closed out the year and finalized it, what it was, the bottom line, we ended at 14%. However, that year we had only budgeted a 7.8% ending fund balance. So we had 6% savings that year. And then 4% savings the year after. The last 2 years is kind of that COVID start and pandemic start where it was just a lot harder to budget for because there was so much changing through the pandemic. And we had additional resources coming in from grants. And so when we're looking at the next slide, I'll talk about what the 2-year projection and impact is if nothing changes. But this savings and our historical trend of saving and budgeting conservatively has helped us and will help us into that second year of the biennium. So we're really hoping to continue that conservative spending for this next year to help us in that second year. And so this is kind of what I'm talking, the proposed budget column in green, that's the one that was shared in a couple of slides prior. But if we take everything that we're doing this year and make no changes other than adding some COLA, adding some property tax increase, using the 51% of the state school fund, and our enrollment stays the same, this is what that budget would look like for the second year of the biennium. We would be down to a 1.5% ending fund balance. So the last slide where we were showing the savings each year and our intent to save this next year is why we feel comfortable with this budget that's proposed tonight. So we did budget greater than the 8% ending fund balance. That's the board policy. We can't budget below, but we did that intentionally because of the second year of the biennium and we're in that deficit spending. Any questions on general fund before I move on to other funds? When we look at other funds outside of the general fund within this budget, it includes everything from grants to our food service, debt service, capital projects, the Viking House and plant sale fund, internal service and scholarship and trust accounts. I'm not going to go through all of these individually tonight, but the ones that are bolded are the ones that we're going to see changes in going into next year. So my next few slides will go over those in more detail. We'll talk about our integrated guidance, Measure 98 high school success budgets, our SIA student investment account budget, ESSER, and then the bond related debt service capital projects. For our integrated guidance, which our SIA and Measure 98 are underneath that umbrella, our plan has 5 major goals underneath of it. The first one includes all students graduating high school, college ready, civic life, career, high school ready for civic life, career, and college. The next one is strengthening our service to underserved student populations, behavioral health that removes barriers, increasing student attendance, and then increasing equitable access to advanced level coursework. And then underneath each one of those, I have a few things that is in that plan that we are targeting to get to each one of those goals. High school success is about $1.8 million. And then our student investment account is $4.7 million. Looking at the staffing underneath both of those grants going into next year, we have about 30% of that, the staffing allocation or FTE is in classified, 64% in license, and 4.5% in administrative support. 44 FTE out of SIA funds, and 10 FTE out of high school success fund. This is what you have or what you're adding. Those are what is budgeted. It's, most of it is already current and getting rolled forward, but this is the new integrated guidance plan that we went through over the last 4 or 5 months to develop. So it's the refreshed plan. As far as ESSER 1 was fully spent last year. ESSER 2 expires September 30th of this year. So there's a little bit of budget in the grant funds for ESSER 2 to close out. We do have some summer HVAC projects that are already on the books to finish that ESSER fund out. And then ESSER 3 ends at the end of next year, September of 24. And that one includes, for this next fiscal year, includes $500,000 for direct services to students. It includes $1.3 million for HVAC projects, most of which we've already committed and has been going for the last 6 months, 9 months, because engineering and supplies have taken so long to do. So that's getting delayed into next year. $260,000 for building health IAs. Currently, we have 6.5-hour IAs, health IAs at each building. Those are getting dropped down to 4 hours with this ESSER budget, and the following year will go away because those funds will expire. And then $297,000 for technology. The last of the other bond funds, I talked briefly about it earlier, but and Mr. Parker talked about it in his superintendent message, but with that $121 million bond that passed in November, plus the $6.7 million awesome grant that we got from the state, it's a matching grant. We had our first bond sale of 2 in March for this. We split the bond, the sale of the bond into 2 sales, $190 million sale this spring, and then the next one will happen the spring of 2025. And with that, the reason why we split it into 2 is because from the date that we get of the bond sale, we have to spend 95% of that within 3 years. And so to give us time to be able to do all of the projects, we split it into 2 because that'll give us 5 years to do it. The debt service funds will increase, and then the capital projects funds will increase also. So the debt service will increase for property taxes collected by our taxpayers so that we can then pay the new debt. And then capital projects will increase because of that beginning fund balance from that first sale, and then the expenditures related to the first year of bond projects. All right, to quickly link back our strategic plan and our goals to this budget. At the last budget committee meeting, we talked about our current strategic plan is being redeveloped and re-envisioned, so we don't have it finalized yet. But I did want to bring you some language from the current draft and hope to link some of the things that we're hoping to embed in this new strategic plan into this budget. Even though we don't have it done yet, we are still making progress towards it. And for instruction and learning, the things that we're planning on doing in this upcoming year are providing professional development on explicit phonics and language comprehension, training staff and implementing new M-class literacy assessment, and then aligning the MTSS systems K-6 and 7-12. For family and student engagement, we are planning on developing an educational plan, improving regular attendance of all students, implementing a wide range of in-person community engagement opportunities, and then partnering with community organizations in celebration of cultures and traditions within our community. For behavioral health and wellness, we have hiring counselors to align with the 1 to 250 caseload. And that's being accomplished by the counselors and SIA funds. That was a couple of slides ago. Hiring mental health care coordinators, K-12, those are also in SIA. And then training educators in collaborative problem solving. As far as creating a resilient organization, We're going to continue to expand the grow your own opportunities for staff and students. And then, with the general fund, we're gonna try to develop a process to be able to really integrate the strategic plan into the budgeting process and making sure that we're aligning those and being very intentional in the next year as that strategic plan and the action items are finalized. Manage and support the bond and make sure that we're being as transparent as possible with the bond funds and how those are being spent. And then safety and security systems, we are in the process of improving all of our safety and security systems, doing all of our internal audits to find out what we need to do and what steps we need to do with bond funds and more training to be able to really make headway with that. So those are the 4 major categories of our strategic plan drafts and things that we have developed and are in the process of working on for next year. Okay, the last thing that I have tonight is to go through just kind of the outline of the budget book and where to find things. Is there any questions on the data, the information that I've given tonight that you guys have or are wondering about?
I guess this current budget is focused around the 9.9, right? And then obviously we have to pass, the budget prior to finding out what the increase, if the increase happens. What's kind of the general thought of, if the 10.3 does come through, is that mostly, is there kind of a thought process as to where that plugs in later? Is that something we can talk about? Just
If we get additional funds over the 9.9, we can then come back to the board and ask for increased appropriations. We've already internally started talking about what all the needs are across the district. We've met with the administration and all of the administrators. We have our priorities and our goals set. So we've already started developing that list internally. We're not ready to share that yet.
No.
But we have already started considering that and what that would look like. And then there's also the balance of we are in deficit spending. So how much of that do we balance for additions versus the second year of the budget?
burn trajectory.
Yes. So those are all things that we're looking at and we are talking about internally and planning for that. But if it does come in higher, then we will definitely go back to the board and have that conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we're looking through the budget book, just to get you oriented towards it, the budget message, Mr. Parker went over on the first couple of pages. And then after the budget message, there's a section about the budget for the district. And it goes through just information about our district, information about our board, the budget committee, elementary schools. It talks about our school improvement plan. So it has just a lot of district related information in it. After that, there's a section that's called budget at a glance. And it goes over everything that I went over tonight, but in more detail. So it talks about the staffing allocations at the building. FTE is broken out more detailed than what I broke it out tonight. It goes over our COLA increases, PERS, enrollments, property taxes. It just talks up a lot about our district information and details behind the budget. After budget at a glance, it goes into the budgets in detail. So general fund, and then it'll break out all of the instruction, what's spent at elementary, middle school, high school, facilities, maintenance, business, superintendent's office. So it'll go through all of those functions in detail by major funds. So general fund, grants, food service, all of those appropriations. And then at the end of the budget document has all of our supplemental information related to the district and our budget, our policies related to finance, public notices that are required for the budget process, and then acronyms, glossary, information on our chart of accounts and requirements for our financial reporting. So that's kind of the overall budget document. Definitely dig into it, ask questions. We are here to help you guys now. So don't feel like you have to do it in a day. But if you do have any questions going through it, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'd be happy to sit down with you guys and go through all of those questions. Preferably, I'd like to have the questions by Wednesday, so I have a little bit of time to prep for them before Thursday night's meeting and get all of that data. But I'm happy to meet with you guys on Monday, Tuesday, and go through stuff in more detail if you need to. So
You got a book to read.
we have a book to read. So. I think I'm all done here, so it's back to you.
Okay, so, I guess one quick question I had was, yeah, I mean, I guess at this point, you're starting to get, enrollment for next year sorted out. Are you seeing any increases or decreases, or is it staying flat still for next year? Or,
I'm budgeting flat enrollment.
okay.
I'm not seeing any major increases. We kind of see the increases by now, or will it? We probably wouldn't see, if anybody's moving school districts, they're probably staying in the district that they're in. And we probably won't see, we're starting to see, I think, kindergarten information. But as far as moves in and outs, I don't have any more information than what is in this budget. And this budget was built off of March enrollment. So roll forward and project it out.
And I think looking at the enrollments over the last couple of years, I really don't see anything that would tell us that there's, I think we've stayed pretty stable, and I think we're planning that's our best planning, I think, right now.
We've had several developments that have come in and migration into our community. We're just not seeing the migration in exceeding the students exiting and the transition of, the smaller incoming grades than the high school kid grades going out. And a lot of the new homes coming into our community aren't families. They're, yeah. So we're seeing less larger families. There's not a lot of low income coming into our community. So
How about the 8th grade to the 9th grade? What are we seeing?
8th grade to 9th grade, I always budget around 50 increase, but that's because of all of our private schools in our community end of 8th grade. And then the kids come in from private schools from outside. So I always budget between 50 and 75 increase from private schools coming in from that 8th grade to 9th grade transition.
Do we have an online education system in first quarter?
We do this year, but this budget does not include online for next year.
So this is what we thought.
Because that's funded with ESSER funds right now, temporary.
There is an online component at the high school level that's currently kind of housed out of Calc. We're still working with that one, but we were hosting a online 3 through 6, and that is not there in this budget.
How was the online this year versus 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, or something? Not significantly.
Yeah, most of our kids came back, I mean, K through 9, K through 8, most of our kids came back to school. We're still seeing, Tim, how many online students do you have right now? 52. At the secondary level.
There was a couple earlier last year, and
It was more last year, but that's staying more, that need is still there at the secondary level, it seems like.
But it opened school, like, taken off.
And we'll maintain the online option for the CAP program and the CAP staffing that we have.
We
built
will.
into it. Yeah, it's the elementary that's.
Just the elementary.
yes, any other questions? Anybody have any requests for any additional information for the next meeting yet? Probably not, since we haven't read through.
We can email you.
Yeah. Please. Yes, call me or email me with any questions between now and then. I'd rather bring the information on Thursday and be able to have that than have to wait and then be delayed again. So definitely give me a call or email.
Okay, so I guess open it up to public comment at this point. Right? We didn't receive any.
No.
Okay, all right.
Did the public see this
It will be available to the public on the website after this meeting
after
or
this?
tomorrow morning. Yeah. This document does not become a public document until you, our budget committee, receives it. So
So why would the public comment that would be, what kind of public comment would be?
they can ask questions or they can make comment about what the priorities are or concerns are, but they'll have an opportunity also at the next meeting to have public comment. Mhm.
Does anyone on Zoom have any questions they would like to add or?
No.
No, thanks.
Okay. I think we're on to the next meeting. That is next Thursday, is that what you said? Thursday? Okay. Cool. All right, well, I guess, nobody has anything else? We adjourn? Okay.
Thank you.